The dream was supposed to be simple. One day, Prince Harry would return to Britain, walk back through familiar palace gates, reconnect with his family, and prove that the royal chapter of his life was never truly over. But now, insiders are whispering that King Charles has made a decision so devastating, so symbolic, and so impossible to ignore that Harry's comeback dream may have just shattered into pieces right before the world's eyes. For years, Harry insisted he had found freedom. He left Britain, he left royal duties. He boarded what he proudly called a freedom flight and built a new life thousands of miles away in California. But what happens when the freedom you chase starts looking less like liberation and more like exile? That question is suddenly hanging over everything, because while Harry has been fighting legal battles, giving interviews, and speaking publicly about security concerns, something very different has reportedly been happening behind palace walls. And according to growing speculation, the latest developments surrounding Frogmore Cottage may reveal exactly how the royal establishment truly feels about the possibility of Harry ever coming back. The details are astonishing. Frogmore Cottage wasn't just another royal property. It was the place Harry and Meghan called home. It was their first major residence as a married couple. It represented a future that once seemed secure. Yet now reports suggest that renovations associated with their time there are being reversed, and the property itself could be reconfigured once again. And that is where the symbolism becomes impossible to ignore. Because critics are asking a brutal question. If the royal household truly believed Harry's return was only a matter of time, why erase every visible reminder of his presence there? Why spend money restructuring a property that could easily have remained available? Why create the impression that the Sussex chapter is being closed rather than preserved? Those questions have fueled a storm of speculation. Some insiders claim the move sends a message louder than any official statement ever could. Not through speeches, not through press releases, through actions, and actions are often what hurt the most. Meanwhile, another uncomfortable reality has been drawing attention. The financial pressure rumors surrounding Harry and Meghan refuse to disappear. Questions continue to swirl around business ventures, media projects, brand launches, and future income streams. Whether those rumors are fair or not, they have created a narrative that many royal watchers cannot stop discussing. Because suddenly, Harry's repeated efforts to maintain ties to Britain are being viewed through a completely different lens. Is it really about family? Is it really about reconciliation? Or is it about something far more practical? That debate has become increasingly intense. Every court appearance, every security appeal, every discussion about returning to Britain becomes another piece of a puzzle that people are desperately trying to solve. And while Harry's supporters argue he simply wants to protect his family and maintain connections to his homeland, critics see a different story unfolding. A story in which every closed door makes his situation more complicated than ever before. Then comes the issue that may matter more than anything else: security. Because behind all the emotional headlines and dramatic family narratives sits a very practical reality. Security status changes everything. It determines how easily Harry can travel. It affects how often he can visit. And perhaps most importantly, it influences whether any meaningful long-term return to Britain is realistically possible. That is why every ruling, every appeal, and every government decision surrounding security has become such a high-stakes battle. For Harry, it may represent a pathway back. For his critics, it represents a privilege they believe he voluntarily walked away from. And somewhere in the middle sits King Charles, facing pressure from every direction while the future of the family remains uncertain. Because no matter how many headlines appear, one question refuses to disappear. Has Charles quietly accepted that Harry's future no longer belongs inside the royal fold? Or is there still one final chance for reconciliation before the door closes forever? What happens next may determine whether Harry's dream of returning home survives, or whether it becomes another chapter of royal history that can never be rewritten. But if Harry's problems were limited to palace politics, the situation would be far easier. The real complication, according to endless royal gossip, is that the battle is no longer just between Harry and the institution. It is becoming a battle between competing futures. One future pulls Harry back toward Britain, toward family, toward unfinished business that has haunted him ever since he left. The other future pulls him deeper into California, deeper into the life he built with Meghan, and further away from everything he once knew. And according to persistent reports, that conflict has reportedly created enormous strain. Because while Harry appears unable to completely let go of Britain, Meghan is frequently portrayed as having no desire whatsoever to revisit the drama they left behind. Whether those reports are accurate or exaggerated hardly matters anymore. The perception itself has become part of the story. The image being painted is dramatic. Harry looking backward, Meghan looking forward. Harry searching for reconnection, Meghan protecting the life they already created. And somewhere in the middle sits a marriage carrying the weight of two very different visions for the future. Then there is another problem that keeps surfacing whenever the Sussexes attempt to step back into the global spotlight. The royal machine is gone. That machine once handled everything: vetting, planning, crisis management, scheduling, reputation protection. Every detail was carefully managed by teams of experienced professionals. Without that support system, every public appearance becomes riskier. Every event becomes vulnerable to unexpected controversy. Every headline becomes harder to control. And critics argue that recent appearances have exposed exactly how difficult life can become without the enormous infrastructure that once operated quietly behind the scenes. The contrast has become impossible for observers to ignore. Once upon a time, Harry and Meghan represented the future of modern royalty. Today, commentators endlessly debate what exactly their public identity has become. Are they celebrities? Are they activists? Are they media entrepreneurs? Are they former royals attempting to create an entirely new category? The uncertainty surrounding those questions continues to fuel speculation on both sides of the Atlantic. But perhaps the most explosive development of all involves the growing belief that King Charles may no longer be the central figure determining Harry's future, because increasingly attention has shifted toward Prince William, and that changes everything. For years, royal watchers assumed that any reconciliation would ultimately depend on Charles. After all, he is Harry's father. He is the king. He possesses the authority. But insiders increasingly whisper that the monarchy's future is already being shaped by William's vision rather than Charles's wishes. And if those whispers are true, Harry faces a much bigger obstacle than he ever imagined. Because while Charles is often portrayed as emotionally torn, William is frequently described as unwavering, firm, resolved, finished. Whether fair or unfair, that perception has become deeply embedded in public discussion. And that is why every story about reconciliation eventually runs into the same wall. William. Again and again, the speculation circles back to him. Again and again, commentators suggest that no meaningful return can happen without his support. And again, reports emerge claiming that support simply is not there. Which brings us back to the shocking decision that started this entire conversation. The symbolic dismantling of Frogmore Cottage may not just be about property. It may not just be about renovations. It may not just be about real estate strategy. For many observers, it represents something far bigger. A statement, a conclusion, a message delivered without a single official announcement. Because when a family preserves something, they protect it for the future. When they prepare for someone's return, they leave a place waiting. But when traces begin disappearing, when connections are quietly removed, when physical reminders are systematically erased, people naturally start asking whether they are witnessing the end of a chapter rather than the beginning of a new one. And that is why Harry's comeback dream suddenly feels more fragile than ever. The dream still exists. The hope may still exist. The emotional attachment certainly still exists. But dreams require open doors. And right now, every signal coming from Britain seems to suggest those doors are becoming heavier, colder, and harder to push open. The irony is impossible to miss. The man who once celebrated escaping royal life now appears trapped by the consequences of leaving it. The man who once called it a freedom flight now finds himself looking back toward the very place he fought so hard to leave behind. And as King Charles moves forward, as Prince William's influence grows, and as the royal family prepares for its next generation, one uncomfortable question hangs over everything. Was Harry's departure the beginning of a temporary separation, or was it the moment that permanently changed his place in royal history forever? Because if recent events are any indication, the answer may already be unfolding right in front of us.